Guys, it's Vandiazel, back again with another Cardfight Vanguard Overdressed deck profile. So if you guys enjoy, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and donate to the Patreon. Let's get this one started. Today, we are doing the Keter Sanctuary Hexaorb deck. Now, you may be wondering, and I'm probably sure you're not, but if you are wondering of why I'm not doing the trial decks yet, is because I was saving the trial decks for last because I started off with my least favorite deck out of all of them, which I don't even remember what that was. I think Zorga. Actually, Zorga's not necessarily my least favorite. It was just the deck I thought was easiest, the one to post at the time. And then I started just going with the theme of doing the ones from Boost that were introduced in the booster set one first. So then I just did that, and then I realized that I was already in the process of it. So I might as well do Hexaorb first, then move on to the trial decks after I do Overlord and PBD if I actually decide I'm going to do them or not. So let's go ahead and get this one started. For our starter today, we have Connect Sorceress. 6k base, 5k shield, grade 0 with boost. Auto and Rotapon, if you went second, you get to draw a card. Nothing special about it, it's just a standard starter ability. Unfortunately, it's not like a main... It's not something we've seen in the anime, actually. We saw Eugene in the anime, which I'm really happy about, but we never got to see Hexaorb in the anime, which is very questionable, but it's fine. It's an okay deck, I guess. Over trigger-wise, we have Light Dragon Deity of Honors, Amari Tonia. 5k base, 50k shield, grade 0 with boost, over trigger. You may only have one over trigger in the deck. When revealed as a trigger, you may remove that card, draw a card, choose one of your units, and it gets +1 million for the turn. If you revealed it during a drive check, activate the additional effect, which is, until end of turn, you also perform drive check for your rear guard attacks. For the first time in my life, I have never pulled that off. The only time I've ever drive checked this over trigger before, like a few days ago, was when I was playing. I'm pretty sure I did this on camera too, where it was just the end of the game and it was game over regardless if I would have saw the over trigger or not. But I saw the over trigger during my Vanguard drive check, and it didn't matter because they died to the Vanguard drive checks. I never actually got to do my rear guard drive checks. But a few days ago, maybe like a week or so ago, I finally got to pull this off. And I got to do a drive check for my rear guards, and I was really happy. Granted, I didn't see triggers because I was pretty much out of triggers at that point, but still, I finally got to pull it off. So I have officially pulled off all over trigger abilities at least once. No thanks to you, Amatarana, for being the one that took the longest. But either way, yeah, that's not important. Point is, like, the rear guard drive checks really helps out, especially in Hexaorb, where you can get multiple effects based off of your trigger drive checks, and Bastion works out as well because you're just grade 3 rushing your opponent to death. So either way, this thing's a really good over trigger. And then on to regular triggers, we have 3 front triggers in the form of Taxus, 4 Bard of Heavenly Song Alpace, which is another front trigger, which is a 4k base, 15k shield, grade 0 with boost rear unit with continuous guard circle. If your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, it gets plus 5k shield. So it's a 20k shield basically, and it's a front trigger, so might as well increase it to 7 fronts because Hexaorb does also get benefits from front. 4 crits in Witch Fang, Witch Disma, and 4 heals in Circuling Sorceress. 5k shield, grade 0 boost, 15k shield power. I mean, yeah, you know what I mean. So, pretty much trigger lineup, 7 front, 1 over, 4 crit, 4 heal. You want to take advantage of those fronts, putting up more power, allowing Hexaorb to give even more power to the rear guards, and making it harder for them to guard, especially if you play the rush style where you push them on really close, because I don't want to run Gurgant, and the deck doesn't really need more criticals. I feel like the fronts do the job, because they push for big numbers. So, 7 fronts, if you want to make it more even, I'd say like 6 fronts, 5 crit. I would not say prioritize the crits over the fronts. I say prioritize the fronts over the crits. On to our normal units, we have 4 Diaglass Sorceress, 8k base, 5k shield, grade 1 with boost. Auto when placed on rear from hand. If your Vanguard is Hexaorb Sorceress or Pentagleam Sorceress, counterblast 1 and discard 1, look at top 2, choose up to 2 units from on them and call them to rear and put the rest at the top. So, by counterblasting 1 and just discarding another card, you can technically just call 2 more units down and get rid of 2 non-triggers in your deck, or you could just stack your deck in any order. So if you did run draws in this deck, for example, you could just stack the draws. So either way, that's a really helpful ability because either you're getting more rear guards out of it, or you're getting knowledge of the triggers you're going to see, so you should know, oh, do I want to do more deck stacking skills, but I know I'm going to see 2 triggers anyways. So Diaglass Sorceress, it's really helpful grade 1, I like it, and it's really nice, so 4 copies. It's also the only grade 1 we'll ever call, and you'll see why in a second. 4 copies of Aegismare Dragon, a PG, 6k base, grade 1, boost, no shield, technically speaking. Continuous Sentinel, you may only have 4 Sentinels in the deck. Auto, when placed on guard, choose one of your units, and it cannot be hit on the battle, and if you have 2 or more cards in hand, you gotta discard 1. So basically, if this and another card's in your hand, just only those 2 cards in your hand, when you play this, you don't have to discard. But if you have 1 more card than those, then you have to discard, basically. Which is why Aegismare is a good PG, because you can come back from anything with it. And it's a really nice thing to have, I guess. So 4 copies. So that's one of our grade 1s, because you never should call this in the first place, because it is a PG unless like you top deck into it and you're forced to call it. And then the other grade 1, this is the only other grade 1 in the deck, which leaves that the fact that Diaglass is the only grade 1 you're ever going to call. Thankfully the deck has enough deck stacking and drawing abilities to where that's not going to be that hard to find it. 1 copy of Tier Square Sorceress. 8k base, 5k short, grade 1 with boost. Auto when plays, auto when rode upon by Pentagleam Sorceress. Counterblast 1 and draw a card. And then auto rear, once per turn, when your drive check reveals a trigger unit, counterblast 1 and choose one of your opponents from or rear guards and put it at the bottom. So the first skill is just what Circle Magus did back in V, where when it was rode upon by anything, you get to draw a card by counterblasting 1, except now it's restricted to Pentagleam Sorceress, which sucks because that means it can't be splashed into other ride lines. But then there's also the ability that, like, yeah, you can kill a front or rear guard, or sorry, send it to bottom if you drive check a trigger, but it costs counterblast 1. The deck does enough counterblasting as is. You never need this. I'm pretty sure I was the only person who ran this at 4 in the main deck in set 1 for the sole reason that I'm a person who I will keep all the ride line at 4 as much as possible until I'm given a reason otherwise for like selective purposes, like maybe they give us more support cards or more specific support cards, or they give us more what's it called, cards, not trigger cards, or like more sorceress themed cards. So I just kept this around at 4, and thankfully I could finally get rid of it, which is amazing. So 1 copy because it's not that good of a card on rear either. And now into grade 2s. 4 copies of Exquisite Knight Olwein. 10k base, 5k show, grade 2 with intercept. First off, I love this thing. Why? It has dual swords. Already it's in my book because it has one of my favorite weapons. Once more, my favorite weapons are dual sword, dual pistol, or a arrow, or just a singular sword, no shield, or a pistol and a shield. I will take any one of those 5 options, and I'll be happy. And also, it's a gold paladin. Tell me this is not a gold paladin. If this is not a gold paladin, I will start crying, and I will make it a gold paladin. This is a really awesome card. Anyways, onto its effect. Auto when placed on rear. If your Vanguard is a Hexaorb Sorceress, Soul Blast 1, look at top 2, choose up to 2 cards from on them, put them on the top of your deck in any order, and put the rest on the bottom. So you don't have to stack the top 2. In fact, you can just send the top 2 to bottom. So if neither of them are units that you want to call, maybe for Diaglass Sorceress, or if they're both, or like they're just units that aren't triggers in general, you can just send them straight to bottom. Or if they're triggers, you know, you can keep them on top. Or if one's a trigger and one's not, you can just send the other one to bottom. If that's not a trigger, then you can keep the trigger on top. Either way, he's a really nice card to have for that. And then the other ability, which I use more than I thought I would, auto rear, when your drive check reveals a trigger unit, counterblast 1 and it gets plus 10k for the turn. So if you know me, and I'll go over this again, for a long time I wasn't able to use decks that had Soul Blast because my friend would only play on area, so we could only use area, and I would never be able to access my soul, so I had to play decks that only use resources such as discard and counterblast and binding, which was never the worst, but like normally when you do that for such a long time, you eventually kind of become used to the fact that counterblasts are the only resource, so you got to use them sparingly, and Soul Blast doesn't exist at the moment. So for some reason I never use a Soul Blast skill, I guess out of pure like reaction, but then the counterblast skill I somehow use a lot, and the deck still works out pretty well, and I somehow never have a counterblast problem. So this deck I feel like has worked pretty well, or at least for me personally, because that plus 10k every time you see a trigger, plus Hexaorb skill, plus a trigger itself, that's 30k to 1 unit if you give them all to this unit, which is really nice. So, amazing card, 4 of. And then our only other grade 2, as you can see, this deck's not that filled in grade 1s and 2s. Pentagleam Sorceress, 10k base, 5k shield, grade 2 with intercept. Auto and rode upon by Hexaorb. Look at top 3 and stack them at the top in any order you wish. Really nice for just stacking 3 triggers at the top or dual trigger. And then auto when placed on rear. Look at the top card and put at the top or bottom. If you put at the bottom, it gets plus 2 for the turn. Okay, I'm going to note to you right now, if you use this exact deck, you will never use that ability. You will never use it. You use it for the ride line skill and nothing else. It is at more than 1 because I like Pentagleam more than like any other card, and while and it does have that useful deck stacking skill, but in my entire time of using this, I've never needed to use it because Olwein carries the deck stacking and Diaglass carries the deck stacking, and so does Hexaorb. This is, in my personal opinion, you can use it if you want. I like to keep it because it's just a freebie stack, which is why I like it so much, but you will never call it in the form of an attacker. You call it to the back row, use its on-play skill, and then it never sees the light of day again. That's pretty much what it does. Or it's a PG fodder. Either way, I feel like it's something important to have in that because, like, at some point, you do need a PG fodder. You need a discard fodder for the ride line, which is why this is here, so you don't have to make the hard decision. So, yeah, Pentagleam, it's a really good card in the case that, like, you need the deck stacking for free, but otherwise it's like discard and ride line fodder, which, like I said before, isn't a bad thing, because what's worse than like having to think about all these nice cards that you want to use or that you know are going to be useful later on in the game, but you have to ditch one of them now, which might fuck up your plan later? Why not just ditch the card that has no remote purpose except for being a freebie version of what 95% of your deck does? So, or not 95, but you get the point. So Pentagleam, 4 of, just so that you can see it more often, but you're not really required to use it. And now onto grade 3s. 2 copies of Divine Sister Lepisto, 13k base, grade 3, 200 Persona Ride, auto rear when your draft check reveals a trigger unit, counterblast 2 stand, and it gets +5 for the turn. That's really nice. The 5k is kind of minuscule, so it's not the best, but that restand allows for 4 attacks. I never called 2 at the same time because that's just a bad idea, but it allows for 2 attacks basically from the same unit, allowing for a grand total of 4. You drive check a bunch of triggers, you stack a bunch of power, you get a bunch of effects off, and then your opponent kind of can't guard it. Like, on average, I've seen a trigger every single turn ever since I started playing Hexaorb. Every turn I would get on Hexaorb, or every turn I was on Hexaorb, I would get a trigger. So I would always be able to go Lepisto, swing, get a trigger, restand it, give +10 to it from the trigger, which is normally a front trigger for some reason, so it was always at 23, plus the 5k, so 28, plus the skill from Hexaorb, which I would sometimes give to the other rear guard, but other times I would give it to Lepisto, so 38 on its own, which is a really nice swing, and then if you combine a Persona Ride with it, that's 48, and I probably have more triggers in it. So Lepisto is a really helpful card, but you don't want to see it too often, because it's a counterblast 2 and stuff like that, so 2 copies. Next up, we have Octadevote Sorceress, grade 3, 200 Persona Ride, 13k base, auto rear when your draft check reveals a trigger unit. If your Vanguard is a Hexaorb Sorceress, retire it and countercharge 1 or soul charge 1. It's an or, so you can't pick both. Now, I like this ability in the sense that it can get you a countercharge or a soul charge out of it, which the deck needs the resources for, but I will never willingly use this because, like, I'm against killing my own rear guards. Like, if I have the extra space, like, if I have 4 rear guard circles filled and I have that extra rear guard, then yeah, I'll use this. But if I have to kill one of my own rear guards just to call this down, I probably won't use it unless it's my only way to win the game. But if it's an unnecessary moment in the game, I probably won't use its skill because I hate sacrificing my own rear guards. So yeah, Octadevote is not necessarily my favorite card, but it is a good card and ability, so I say 3 of. And next up, we have another countercharger / soul charger just in case we need it. Knight of War damage, Fosado. 13k base, grade 3, 200 Persona Ride, continuous rear. This unit cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects, and then auto rear. When this unit attack hits, countercharge 1 and soul charge 1. So this is an or, this is an and. So allowing for multiple things to go off at the same time. I like to have this card in the deck, and this is partially why I run more fronts over the criticals. Because yes, while crits can kind of like damage starve your opponent and force them to guard selective attacks, it still makes the attack of Fosado easier to guard, while front triggers make it bigger numbers and force them to drop a PG. So either way, I'm getting them to drop a PG, it's just a matter of which one they want to drop a PG against. Well, in comparison with the PG of a critical, they can just probably guard Fosado a lot easier, which is why I like the front trigger spamming a lot more. And plus, it can't be chosen by card effects, and, you know, they can't lock it, they can't bind it from field, they can't retire it, which makes it so well. Especially because the deck has so much guarding power that normally when people try killing it, they have to kill it the turn I place it. Otherwise, I'm going to protect it with my life, which is why it's really easy to do in this deck. And that on hit just allows so much pressure and can allow me to stall for so long. So Fosado is a 4 of beauty. And our last normal unit, and our main grade 3 itself, Hexaorb Sorceress. Grade 3, Twin Drive, Persona Ride, Auto Van, 30k base by the way, once Auto Van, when your draft check reveals a trigger unit, choose one of your rear guards and it gets +10 for the turn. Not at once per turn, so if you see 2 triggers, something, you can give it to 2 different units, but you're getting +20 in grand total from just its effect. And if you see 3 triggers, well, that's 30, etc., etc., but the good news is that technically means whenever you see 1 trigger, you're basically pulling a second trigger, which is really nice to have, and you can just stack it on 1 unit, make it more powerful like Lepisto, restand it, swing, or do what I do, give it to Fosado, swing, and then they kind of just have to take it because it has big numbers, or they just PG it and waste one of their 4 PGs now. And then the other skill, which I like, Act Van once per turn. If you Persona Road this turn, Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1. Reveal up to 1 critical or 1 front trigger from your hand and put it at the top of your deck, and this unit gets +1 drive for the turn. So you don't have to put a crit or a front at the top of the deck for you to get the +1 drive skill. If you don't have either, you can still just get the +1 drive skill, but it's better to have the crit or front in deck, which is why we removed the draw triggers, because you don't need them, because it's better to have the front or the crits in the deck so you can increase your chances. Disma, like I said before, you don't need the crits. It's not meant to be there for like damage pressuring. You're mainly supposed to put fronts, increase your power to force out their guarding, and then they can't really make a massive counterattack on you next turn, unless they're playing something like Orphis and they just happen to have a bunch of counterblast and a bunch of Shadow Army tokens come down, and then you regret your decisions ever playing Hexaorb the way you do. Either way, Hexaorb is a nice thing just to have. The +10 with another trigger being seen, and the fact that you can stack a trigger at the top and get a triple drive out of it is a really nice effect. 4 of. And our last card in the deck is 3 copies of the Blitz Order Hopeful Testode. Grade 3 Blitz Order. If you have 3 or more units, choose one of your units and gets +15 for the battle. So on Hexaorb, it's a 28k swing, 28k guard. Sorry, if only we could give it during our turns, but that's not the case. Either way, that is pretty much the point of this. It's just a 15k shield, which is nice to have. 3 copies. And that was the deck. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, donate to the Patreon, join the Discord, follow the Twitch, and go check out Thera. And I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your vanguards.